My fiancée laughed. I'm only with you for the money, Henry. I'm leaving for someone richer. I smiled and said, good luck. I just froze all our accounts. Her face dropped as she realized her luxury life was over. Henry Alvarez wiped sweat from his brow, the Miami sun baking the rooftop of the Coral Gables spa where he wrestled with a failing air conditioner. At 32, he'd spent nearly a decade fixing HVAC systems across South Florida, earning a solid $75,000 a year. His hands, calloused from years of honest work, gripped a wrench as he coaxed the unit back to life. Raised in a Hialeah family where every dollar was earned through grit, Henry lived by his father's code. A man's worth lies in how hard he works and how well he treats others. It had served him well, keeping his life steady in a city where flash often trumps substance. The spa's manager, a nervous man named Carlos, hovered nearby, muttering about impatient clients. Henry, you're a lifesaver. These ladies will riot if it gets any hotter. Henry just nodded, focused on the job. He'd seen all. Swanky places like this where wealthy patrons sipped overpriced smoothies and treated staff like props. But the work was honest, and the pay kept his modest Hialeah home comfortable, a 3-bedroom fixer-upper he'd bought with a veteran's loan after 4 years in the Army. As he tested the repaired unit, a woman approached, her presence cutting through the rooftop's heat. You're the guy keeping us from melting, she said, her voice warm but not condescending. Henry glanced up to see Amelia Torres, the spa's 28-year-old receptionist, leaning against a railing. Her smile was bright, disarming, the kind that made you feel like the only person in the room. I'm Amelia. These clients owe you big time. Henry chuckled, wiping his hands on a rag. Just doing my job. He wasn't used to attention from someone like her. Polished, confident, navigating this upscale world with ease. They got to talking while he packed his tools. Amelia had grown up in Key Biscayne, private schools and all, a world apart from Henry's upbringing. Yet she seemed genuinely curious about his work. Most guys I meet shuffle papers and call it a day, she said, watching him test the airflow. You actually fix things? That's real. Her words hit deep. Henry had faced plenty of dismissals, people hearing HVAC technician and assuming he was less than the suits at the top. But Amelia saw value in his craft, and it made him stand taller. They swapped numbers before he left, and by evening, his phone lit up with her text. Dinner tonight? My treat for saving the spa. She suggested a trendy spot in Wynwood, the kind of place with no prices on the menu and waiters who looked like models. Henry hesitated. His usual spots were dive bars with $5 beers, but her enthusiasm won him over. At dinner, Amelia was all charm, ordering $40 glasses of wine like it was water, sharing stories of her travels to Tulum and Lisbon. Life's too short for boring, she said, leaning across the table, her hand brushing his. Don't you think? Henry nodded, caught up in her energy. When the bill came, she waved off his offer to split it. I invited you, Henry. This is my thank you. The total was more than he'd spend on groceries in a week, but her insistence felt generous, not flashy. A small voice in his head whispered caution, but he pushed it aside, swept up by her attention. They started seeing each other regularly, Amelia always suggesting upscale places, rooftop lounges in South Beach, steakhouses in Brickell. She'd promised to cover her share, but her card would get declined, or she'd forget her wallet, leaving Henry to pick up the tab. I'm so embarrassed, she'd say, her voice soft, eyes wide with what looked like genuine regret. I'll get the next one, I swear. Henry didn't mind too much. He was falling for her. She'd trace his calloused hands and call them proof of strength, brag to her friend about dating a guy who could fix anything. It felt good to be valued for who he was, not judged for what he wasn't. 3 months in, Amelia suggested moving into Henry's place. I'm tired of throwing money at rent, she said over dinner at another pricey spot. We could split everything 50-50, build something together. Henry, picturing a future with her, agreed. His home wasn't much, a practical space with a kitchen counter he'd installed himself, but it was his, earned through years of overtime and discipline. Amelia called it cozy and authentic, promising to chip in for bills. Henry believed her, ignoring the nagging feeling that her promises came too easily. The first month, she blamed a payroll glitch at the spa for missing her share. It's temporary, she assured him, and he let it slide. But then came his shopping bags from Bal Harbour, the $200 facials, the weekly nail appointments. Henry's credit card statements started climbing, her excuses piling up faster than the debt. My car needed repairs, she'd say, or I'll cover next month, I promise. He wanted to trust her, wanted to believe this was just a rough patch. But deep down, he knew something was off. Amelia wasn't building a life with him. She was building a lifestyle on his dime. Henry Alvarez stared at his bank statement, the numbers glaring back like a warning sign. His savings, once a steady cushion from years of fixing air conditioners across Miami, were shrinking fast. At 32, he'd built a life on hard work, earning $75,000 a year as an HVAC technician, but now his credit card balances were creeping into the thousands. Amelia Torres, his 28-year-old fiancée, had moved into his Hialeah home 4 months ago, promising to split expenses. Instead, her contributions were excuses, and her spending was a runaway train. Amelia's lifestyle was a stark contrast to Henry's practical world. She'd suggest dinners at exclusive Brickell restaurants, where a single meal cost more than his weekly grocery budget. I'll get it next time, she'd say when her card was declined again, her voice laced with just enough embarrassment to keep Henry covering the bill. He'd fallen for her charm, the way she praised his work ethic, calling it authentic, while her friends dated desk jockeys who never touched a tool. But now, her shopping sprees at Bal Harbour, $500 handbags, $200 spa treatments, were draining him. She'd justify it as self-care or networking for her job at the Coral Gables Spa, and Henry, still smitten, let it slide, convincing himself it was temporary. The crack started showing when Amelia quit her job at the spa, just weeks after Henry proposed with a ring he'd saved 6 months to buy from a jeweler in Coconut Grove. I want to focus on our wedding, she announced over dinner at a South Beach rooftop bar, her tone casual, as if it were a joint decision. Plus, I'm thinking of starting an online wellness business. It's the perfect time to chase my dreams. Henry nodded, picturing a shared future, but her dreams came with a price tag. She signed up for business coaching sessions at $150 a pop, held at trendy cafes, and ordered inventory for a venture that existed only in vague Instagram posts. Every charge hit Henry's cards, which she'd added herself as an authorized user. He tried addressing it once, sitting her down with a spreadsheet of their expenses. Amelia, I'm covering everything, he said, keeping his voice steady. It's straining my finances. Her reaction was instant, a masterclass in deflection. You're keeping score like some accountant? She snapped, crossing her arms. I thought we were partners, Henry. Partners don't nickel and dime each other. By the end, she'd twisted it so he felt guilty for even bringing it up, apologizing for doubting her. But the bills kept coming. $300 monthly gym memberships for boutique fitness classes she barely attended, $1,000 shopping trips for work outfits that never saw the spa. The first real jolt came one Tuesday morning when Henry got home early from a canceled job. He walked into his house, expecting it empty, but heard Amelia's voice from the kitchen, low and conspiratorial on the phone. I've got him wrapped around my finger, she said, laughing. He pays for everything, thinks I'm building a business. Henry froze, his stomach twisting. She continued, I met this banker at a gala. Drives a Tesla, lives in Key Biscayne. I'm just waiting for the right moment to bounce. The call ended abruptly when she spotted him, her smile forced. You're home early. Just catching up with my cousin about her mom's health. Henry nodded, playing along, but the name Aunt Linda she mentioned was new, and her nervous eyes betrayed her. Doubt not at him. He confided in his co-worker, Miguel, over beers at a Hialeah dive bar. Miguel, scrolling through Instagram, froze and showed Henry his phone. Isn't this your girl? There was Amelia, posing outside a Bal Harbour boutique with shopping bags, captioned, treating myself with Aunt Linda's inheritance. She always said live for today. The post was public, liked by her socialite friends. Miguel Froneth. Didn't know her aunt was sick, man. Saw the... Henry's blood ran cold. Amelia had never mentioned an aunt's illness, let alone an inheritance. He realized she was spinning lies to justify her spending, maybe even scamming her friends for cash. That night, Henry checked his credit card statements, his jaw tightening as he traced $15,000 in charges over 6 months. Electronics that never appeared, jewelry featured in her Instagram stories, then returned. High-end dinners she claimed were business meetings. The pattern was clear. She buy luxury items, post them online for clout, then return them within store policies, only to repeat the cycle. It was a hustle, and he was the bankroll. Anger simmered, but Henry stayed calm, his army training kicking in. He needed proof, not confrontation. He started documenting everything, saving receipts she left lying around, screenshotting her posts before they vanished, tracking charges on his accounts. Florida's one-party consent law let him record conversations in his own home, so he tucked a small digital recorder in his work shirt. Over a week, he captured Amelia on calls with her friend Vanessa, bragging about milking Henry while planning to max out his cards before leaving. "I'm telling everyone Aunt Linda's dying," she laughed. "They're practically throwing money at me for her medical bills." Each word was a knife, but Henry stayed focused, building a case as methodically as he'd fix a broken AC unit. Amelia's confidence was her weakness. She never suspected Henry was onto her, too busy planning her exit to notice his quiet resolve. She talked openly about a backup plan with a banker, even joking about claiming Henry was controlling to justify a quick split. "I'll say he's financially abusive," she told Vanessa. "That'll get me half his house in court." Henry's heart sank, but his resolve hardened. He wasn't just fighting for his money. He was fighting for his life. Amelia thought she was playing him, but the game was about to flip. Henry Alvarez sat in his Hialeah home, the weight of betrayal heavy, but his mind razor-sharp. At 32, the HVAC technician had spent months bankrolling his fiancée, Amelia Torres's lavish lifestyle, only to discover her plan to fleece him and leave for a wealthier man. The $15,000 in credit card charges, her fake sob story about a dying Aunt Linda, and her scheme to claim half his house in a divorce were all documented in receipts, screenshots, and secret recordings. Now, with $75,000 a year earned through honest sweat, Henry was done being played. The Miami heat outside matched the fire building inside him. Amelia's betrayal crystallized during a late-night phone call Henry overheard. "I'm meeting that banker again," she told her friend Vanessa, her voice smug. "He's got a penthouse in Key Biscayne. Once I lock him down, I'm out. Henry's cards are maxed, so I'm set." She laughed, plotting to accuse Henry of financial abuse to secure his assets in court. "Jalisco's community property laws are solid," she said, mistakenly citing Florida's rules. "Half his house is mine." Henry, hidden in the hallway, recorded every word, his army-honed discipline keeping him calm. Florida's one-party consent law made his recordings legal, and they were damning. He acted fast, consulting Maria Lopez, a sharp-eyed family law attorney in Miami, who specialized in fraud cases. Henry laid out his evidence. Bank statements showing Amelia's $1,000 shopping sprees at Bal Harbour, returned items after Instagram posts, and recordings of her boasting about the scam. "She's planning to file for divorce and claim abuse," he explained, handing over a USB drive. Maria scanned the files, her lips curling into a grim smile. "This is airtight. She's overplayed her hand. We'll hit her before she knows what's coming." The plan took shape over a week. Amelia was organizing a lavish birthday party at South Beach Rooftop Club, the kind of event that cost more than Henry's monthly mortgage. She'd invited her entire social circle, expecting to flaunt her curated image as a grieving niece funding her wellness business with a fake inheritance. Henry saw his chance. "Let's serve her the papers in public," he told Maria. "Somewhere she can't hide." Maria nodded. "We'll also notify her friends about the Aunt Linda lie. She scammed them too. Timing is everything." Henry spent days preparing, his work as an HVAC tech giving him the patience to tackle complex problems methodically. He cross-referenced Amelia's Instagram posts with credit card charges, confirming her pattern of buying luxury goods, posting them for clout, then returning them. He found texts on her phone, left unlocked on the kitchen counter, where she'd borrowed $2,000 from friend Jessica for Aunt Linda's hospital bills. The recordings were the clincher, Amelia laughing about fooling Jessica and others, calling them easy marks. Henry backed everything up to a secure cloud drive, ensuring Amelia couldn't destroy the evidence. The night before the party, Henry froze their joint accounts, a move Maria advised to protect his finances. Amelia didn't notice, too busy planning her $5,000 bash. Henry arranged for a process server to deliver the divorce papers, technically a dissolution of their engagement and shared assets, at Amelia's favorite nail salon in Coral Gables, where she'd be mid-Monty Petty with her clique. He also sent packets to her friends, exposing the fake inheritance with copies of her recorded confessions. Make sure Jessica gets hers first, Henry told Maria. She deserves to know. The day of the party, Henry stayed home, letting the plan unfold. At 2 p.m., the process server walked into the salon, where Amelia was holding court, laughing with Vanessa and 3 others. Amelia Therese, the server asked, handing her the papers. Henry wasn't there, but his co-worker's girlfriend, Carla, was getting her nails done nearby and texted him the play-by-play. Amelia's face froze as she read the documents, her charm cracking under the weight of legal reality. "This is harassment," she snapped, loud enough for the salon to hear. "My fiancé's trying to control me." But the papers listed her fraud, $15,000 in unauthorized charges, the fake aunt story, and her divorce scheme, backed by evidence. At the same time, Jessica and others received their packets. Jessica's included a transcript of Amelia calling her predictable for lending $2,000. By evening, Amelia's phone was blowing up with furious texts from friends she'd scammed. She tried to salvage her image, posting a tearful Instagram story about misunderstandings, but the damage was done. Her socialite friends, once dazzled by her, now saw the truth. The party that night was her final stage. Amelia arrived at the club, expecting adoration, but whispers spread as guests checked their phones. Jessica confronted her, demanding her money back. Others left early, leaving Amelia alone with a DJ spinning for an empty room and a bar tab she couldn't cover. Henry sat at home, his phone buzzing with updates from Carla. Amelia's world was collapsing, and he hadn't lifted a finger that day. His evidence had done the work, exposing her lies to everyone who mattered. But the fight wasn't over. Amelia still thought she could spin her way out, maybe even countersue. Henry knew better. With Maria's help, he was ready for court, armed with proof that would bury her case. The woman who'd played him for a fool was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a man who fixes things for a living. Henry Alvarez leaned back in his Hialeah home, the quiet hum of his air conditioner a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding for his ex-fiancée, Amelia Torres. At 32, the HVAC technician had uncovered Amelia's scheme to drain his $75,000 a year income, max his credit cards, and leave him for a wealthier man while claiming half his house in a divorce. His meticulous evidence, receipts, screenshots, and recordings had turned her world upside down. Now, the fallout from his calculated strike was ripping through her carefully curated life in Miami. Amelia's lavish birthday party at a South Beach rooftop club, meant to be her triumphant showcase, had imploded. Henry's plan, executed with his attorney Maria Lopez, hit her where it hurt most, her reputation. The process server had delivered dissolution papers at her Coral Gables nail salon, mid-Monty Petty, exposing her $15,000 in fraudulent charges and fake Aunt Linda inheritance story in front of her socialite friends. Simultaneously, Henry sent proof of her lies to everyone she'd scammed, including Jessica, who'd lent her $2,000 for non-existent hospital bills. By the time Amelia reached the club, her phone was flooded with angry messages. Guests whispered, checked their phones, and left early, leaving her with a $5,000 tab she couldn't pay. Henry got the details from Carla, his co-worker's girlfriend, who'd been at the party. "It was brutal," Carla texted. She tried to play it off, telling people it was a misunderstanding, but no one bought it. Jessica called her out in front of everyone. Amelia's Instagram, once a highlight reel of luxury, became a battleground. Her tearful stories about being targeted by Henry were drowned out by comments from betrayed friends. "Where's my $2,000? Jessica posted publicly. Others followed, exposing loans Amelia had taken for her fake aunt's medical costs. Amelia's desperation grew. She called Henry that night, her voice shaking with rage and panic. "You're ruining my life," she shouted. "This is harassment, and I'll sue you for defamation." Henry stayed calm, his army training keeping him steady. "Everything I sent is true, Amelia. The recordings, the receipts, it's all real. Talk to my lawyer." He hung up, knowing Maria had already filed for a court date to dissolve their shared assets and hold Amelia accountable for the debt she'd racked up in his name. The next day, Amelia tried damage control, showing up at Henry's house unannounced. She knocked frantically, demanding to talk. "We can fix this," she pleaded through the door, her voice softer now, almost convincing. I made mistakes, but I love you, Henry. Let's work it out. Henry didn't open the door. He'd heard her real feelings on those recordings, laughing about using him, plotting to move on to a banker with a Key Biscayne penthouse. Talk to Maria, he said through the door, then went back to his laptop, double-checking his evidence backups. Amelia's social circle collapsed further. Vanessa, her closest ally, distanced herself after receiving a recording of Amelia calling her useful for covering party expenses. Other friends, like Maria, who'd lent $1,500, cut contact entirely. Amelia's online wellness business, a vague idea she'd funded with Henry's money, fizzled as her credibility tanked. She tried posting about rising above toxicity, but the comments were ruthless. Pay back the money you stole. Her Instagram following, once her pride, dwindled as people unfollowed in droves. Henry, meanwhile, worked with Maria to tighten their case. The recordings, legal under Florida's one-party consent law, captured Amelia admitting to maxing out Henry's cards and planning to accuse him of financial abuse. Bank statements showed her pattern of buying luxury items, like a $900 purse she returned after one Instagram post, and charging $200 spa visits to Henry's accounts. Maria was confident. She has no defense, she told Henry over coffee in downtown Miami. The judge will see through her act. She's facing full liability for the debt, and her fraud claims won't touch her house. Amelia tried one last move, filing a countersuit claiming Henry was controlling and had forced her to spend on his cards. It was a desperate play, echoing the abuse narrative she'd planned with Vanessa. But her lawyer, a low-rent divorce attorney, bailed when he saw Henry's evidence. Amelia was left to represent herself, scrambling to spin a story that unraveled under scrutiny. Her social media posts grew frantic, accusing Henry of sabotaging her, but the truth was too clear. She'd played a game and lost. Henry stayed focused, working overtime to rebuild his savings. He canceled the cards Amelia had access to, locking her out of his finances. His Hialeah home, once a battleground of her excuses, felt like his again. He ignored her calls and texts, letting Maria handle communication. The court date loomed, and Henry knew it would be the final nail in Amelia's scheme. She'd underestimated him, thinking a blue-collar guy couldn't outsmart her. But Henry fixed things for a living, broken systems, broken plans, and he was about to fix this mess for good. Henry Alvarez walked in the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, his steps steady despite the weight of the past year. At 32, the HVAC technician had uncovered his fiancée, Amelia Torres' scheme to drain his $75,000 a year income, max out his credit cards, and leave him for a richer man while claiming half his Hialeah home. Armed with receipts, screenshots, and recordings, Henry and his attorney, Maria Lopez, had exposed Amelia's fraud, turning her lavish South Beach birthday party into a public unraveling. Now, in court, it was time to close the chapter on her betrayal. The courtroom was stark, filled with the hum of procedural efficiency. Amelia sat alone, her once confident demeanor replaced by nervous glances. Her lawyer had abandoned her after seeing Henry's evidence. Bank statements showing $15,000 in unauthorized charges, recordings of her laughing about scamming him and her friends with a fake Aunt Linda inheritance story, and texts proving she'd borrowed thousands under false pretenses. Maria had warned Henry, she'll try to play the victim, but the evidence is bulletproof. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the documents. Henry's recordings, legal under Florida's one-party consent law, played in court. Amelia's voice, cold and calculating, bragging about maxing out Henry's cards and planning to accuse him of abuse to claim his house. He's so eager to provide. It's all in his name, she'd laughed to her friend Vanessa. The judge's expression didn't shift, but her pen moved quickly, jotting notes. Amelia's countersuit, claiming Henry was controlling, crumbled as Maria presented proof of her spending. $900 purses returned after Instagram posts, $200 spa visits, $300 gym memberships she barely used. Amelia took the stand, her voice trembling as she spun a tale of being pressured into spending by Henry. He wanted me to fit his idea of a perfect fiancé, she said, eyes darting to the judge. Maria didn't flinch. Ms. Torres, how do you explain the recordings where you admit to exploiting Mr. Alvarez's finances? Amelia stammered, claiming the recordings were out of context, but the judge cut her off. I've heard enough. The evidence speaks for itself. The ruling was swift. No alimony, no claim to Henry's home, and full liability for the $15,000 debt Amelia had racked up. She was ordered to repay her friends, like Jessica, who'd lent her $2,000 for the fake aunt's hospital bills. As the gavel fell, Henry felt a weight lift. Amelia's face was pale, her socialite facade shattered. She left the courtroom alone, her phone silent now that her Miami social circle had turned on her. Jessica and others had spread the word, and Amelia's Instagram, once a shrine to her fake luxury, was a ghost town. She'd moved to a cramped studio in Opelika, working retail at a strip mall, her credit score in ruins from the unpaid club tab and court-order debts. Her attempts to post about overcoming adversity were met with scathing comments. Pay what you owe. Henry returned to his Hialeah home, now a sanctuary again. His savings, battered by Amelia's spending, were slowly recovering as he took on extra HVAC jobs. The peace of working with his hands, fixing compressors, balancing systems grounded him. He'd learned to spot red flags, charm that came too easy, promises that never materialized. But he hadn't closed himself off. At a job site in Kendall, he met Sophia, a 27-year-old physical therapist who treated his coworker Miguel for a back injury. She was independent, with a quick laugh and a no-nonsense attitude. When they went for coffee, she insisted on splitting the bill. I invited you, so I pay my half, she said firmly. That's how this works. Sophia was different. She asked about Henry's work, fascinated by the mechanics of HVAC systems, even joking about learning to fix her own AC. When he repaired her unit during a sweltering July day, she paid his standard rate without hesitation. You're a professional, Henry. I respect that. Their dates were simple. Tacos at a food truck, beers at a local brewery, but real. She valued his craft, not his wallet. And for the first time, Henry felt seen without strings attached. Amelia's downfall was a lesson hard-learned. She'd underestimated Henry, thinking a blue-collar guy couldn't outmaneuver her. But her biggest mistake was overestimating her own cunning. Her lies, built on borrowed money and fake tears, collapsed under the weight of truth. Henry, meanwhile, emerged stronger, his trust bruised, but not broken. He kept fixing things, AC units, his finances, his heart, knowing now that real worth isn't in what you spend, but in what you build with honesty. As Sophia laughed with him over a $5 beer, Henry knew he'd found something genuine, and no one could scam him out of that.